Welcome to Series 2, Episode 9 of When Safeguarding Fails, the Lizzie Gladwell Crisis. I'm Jeremy Gladwell, Lizzie's dad, and I'm telling the heartbreaking true story of how our daughter, a vulnerable young person, was taken, isolated, and subjected to coercive control, and how she was cast adrift by the agencies tasked with safeguarding. The internal investigation at Linkage College began with a letter I wrote to them. Jane and I were in no doubt that Linkage College was involved in the predatory removal of Lizzie. Linkage staff were aware of the Wilson-Clark plan to take her, but chose not to inform us at the critical moment. That selective silence, we feel, allowed Coral's plan to proceed. We'd known this for a long time. Back in July 2023, during one of the few walks I had with Lizzie in the days following her removal, Lizzie told me that Lewis's learning mentor had asked her on the day of the removal if the plan was still on. The plan was on, and Linkage, knowing this, chose not to tell us. That choice appeared at the very least to amount to a tacit acceptance and approval of the scheme. I hadn't immediately pressed that point with Linkage because I had been fully absorbed in attempting to get Focus Adult Social Work and Humberside Police to deliver meaningful safeguarding practice and uphold the law. But by February 2025, I was done depleting my emotional reserves on adult social care and the police. I had been ignored, dismissed and threatened with arrest, all because I wanted to protect my daughter from isolation, manipulation and exploitation. Those agencies had shown no intention of resolving this situation. However, Lizzie was still a student at Linkage College, and Linkage held a duty of care towards her. And although we felt Linkage had facilitated this safeguarding catastrophe, I wondered if they could yet be the agents of resolution, a chance for them to address and remedy their own apparent involvement. I wrote to Linkage, urging them to consider actionable measures that would enable the college to help resolve the crisis and free Lizzie from the control and isolation that had impeded her ability to make independent life choices. I wasn't looking for a lawsuit or a punitive response. I simply wanted Linkage to acknowledge the situation they had helped create and do something to fix it for Lizzie's sake. I received a response from the Chief Executive of Linkage Community Trust, who accurately summarised my concerns. 1. That I felt my daughter had been or was subject to predatory removal, coercive control, manipulation and exploitation. And 2. That I felt Linkage College had been involved in the development and perpetration of this situation. Both points were absolutely correct. The first point, given the documented evidence, was hard to dispute. The second, we felt, was also undeniable, given Lizzie's own account of the conversation with the learning mentor. The Chief Executive stated, "I have asked the Assistant Director, as an independent person who reports directly to myself, to investigate your concerns and respond to you." I couldn't help but notice the reference to independence. The investigator reported directly to the Chief Executive, which didn't feel entirely independent. Nonetheless, in good faith, I made contact with the Assistant Director, and we had a long and seemingly positive conversation. He appeared curious, astute, and considerate. He acknowledged our pain and distress. I felt heard, believed, and trusted. I was encouraged and dared to hope he would conduct a thorough investigation to bring the truth to light. And this investigation was not just important, it was crucial. Linkage College is an educational institution exclusively for young people with special educational needs, learning difficulties, cognitive impairments. Some students are under 18, many are over 18, legally adults but still in many ways adolescent and vulnerable. How Linkage College handled this situation would likely indicate how they would manage any similar future situation. I hadn't wanted an investigation, of course. It would take yet another month. Lizzie was drifting further and further away from us. I was afraid of forgetting the sound of her voice, like a deceased loved one, when you realise you'll never hear their voice again. My concern was that it would amount to little more than an exercise in reputational damage control, rather than a genuine effort to safeguard a vulnerable individual. We would soon find out. The starting pistol was fired. The investigation was underway. It would take 30 days. All we could do was wait. True to his word, the assistant director delivered his report within the promised deadline. The report was brief, barely a side and a half of A4. Though it wasn't rich in detail, I had no doubt he had reviewed notes and interviewed members of staff. One line in particular stood out. Quote, "On the 20th of July 2023, the student event logs evidence that Lizzie confirms the plan of moving out of the family home. Staff made records of the conversation with Lizzie. Linkage staff escalated the information to social services." End quote. This casual and brief statement was the loose thread that would soon unravel the fabric of deception and collusion we suspected. On that date, the 20th of July 2023, the day of the supposed revelation and confirmation, it was Lizzie's 18th birthday. She wasn't at college on that day. She was with me in York. We sang, laughed, ate ice creams, enjoyed frappuccinos, and watched the city as we sailed along the River Ouse on a boat cruise, before walking the city walls. That's what happened on the 20th of July. In the evening we had fish and chips as a family and watched TV, probably Keeping Up Appearances, which was Lizzie's favourite show at the time. There was no way, no chance, no opportunity for Lizzie to have any conversation with Linkage staff on that day, at all. Whatever conversation or revelation took place at Linkage on that day, it wasn't with Lizzie because she had a watertight alibi. Quote, "On the 20th of July 2023, the student event logs evidence that Lizzie confirms the plan of moving out of the family home. Staff made records of the conversation with Lizzie. Linkage staff escalated the information to social services." Let's imagine for a moment that on her 18th birthday, Lizzie actually was at college and approached a staff member saying, "I'm just letting you know of my plan to move out of my family home now that I'm legally an adult." What would the appropriate response be? Let's assume linkage had no concerns or safeguarding misgivings, and that they presumed Lizzie had thought this through and had capacity to do so. If a legal adult says they intend to move out of the family home if there are no concerns, then that simply warrants a nod of the head and a minimal response. Not escalation, and certainly not to social services. What prompted linkage to escalate it to social services? Did they have concerns? What were those concerns? Quote, "On the 20th of July 2023, the student event logs evidence that Lizzie confirms the plan of moving out of her family home. Staff made records of the conversation with Lizzie. Linkage staff escalated the information to social services." The more I examined this part of the letter, the less it made sense. Lizzie didn't confirm anything on the 20th of July 2023. She wasn't there. Why did linkage feel the need to escalate? If there was an escalation, especially to social services, the staff member must have had worries, concerns, or fears. The fact that it was escalated, whatever it was, implies that there were safeguarding concerns significant enough for the staff member to contact social services, and not us, as Lizzie's parents. Why? That's the question I've asked most often through this whole debacle. It's the question I've directed at Focus Adult Social Care, the question directed at Humberside Police, and now to Linkage College. Why? Stop hiding things, stop concealing, stop obstructing, just tell me the bloody truth. Please. Our daughter's safety is at stake here. The assistant director is a good guy. I believe he wanted to uncover the facts. Not being based at the Grimsby campus, he didn't know Lizzie, the staff members, or the Wilson Clark family. He simply asked questions and accepted the responses at face value. Nonetheless, in a call with him after his first report, he acknowledged that there did seem to be some mysterious discrepancies that warranted further investigation. That would take another month. Yet another month. Something happened at the college on the 20th of July 2023 that led a member of staff to escalate the matter to Focus Adult Social Work. The follow-up investigation report arrived, again in a timely manner. You may recall that 2 weeks before Lizzie's removal, shortly before her 18th birthday, Lewis had been overheard in class boasting that when Lizzie turned 18, he and his mother Coral would take Lizzie to live with them, and Lizzie would never see her parents again. That incident was red flagged as a safeguarding concern by the safeguarding lead at the Grimsby campus, who contacted Jane that same day. It was entirely appropriate to bring it to our attention as Lizzie's parents, and on that occasion, Linkage acted appropriately and professionally. So what went so catastrophically wrong 2 weeks later? The follow-up report gave more clues. Quote, "This entry has been validated as the day that staff were made aware of the intention to move out of the family home. The learning mentor recorded that they had contacted social services on the 20th of July 2023 and were advised, as Lizzie is 18, legally we can't do anything apart from ensuring that Lizzie is happy with this plan and advising her of safe zones and that she can say no. Well, that's interesting. It wasn't Lizzie saying anything because Lizzie was with me celebrating her birthday. It was someone else. Lewis? Coral? It could even have been both of them. The learning mentor, upon hearing the plan from Lewis and/or Coral in Lizzie's absence, phoned Focus Adult Social Work. The crucial question remains: why social services and not Lizzie's parents? If linkage's justification was that Lizzie was 18 and her permission was needed to contact her parents, then the same permission should have been needed to contact social services. Lizzie was absent, yet the learning mentor contacted social services about our daughter instead of contacting us. Why? That does not make sense. This situation is about our daughter, Lizzie, but it could be about any vulnerable student at Linkage College, an establishment exclusively for young people with special needs, including cognitive impairment. The learning mentor, an employee of Linkage College, was now inextricably linked to the plot for Lizzie's removal. 2 weeks prior, it was a red flag. Now, Linkage College appeared to be assisting it. Why? This phone call took place on the 20th of July 2023 between the learning mentor and Focus, presumably with Lewis and/or Coral still in the room. Lewis and/or Coral, who could not believe their luck. Focus had no prior knowledge or record of Lizzie and had never assessed her capacity to make such a monumental decision. To be taken from outside her home with none of her possessions, to be cut off and isolated from her entire family and support network, her loved ones, and all that was familiar to her, to not even have the opportunity to say goodbye to her mum and dad. That was the plan for a vulnerable young person with a formal diagnosis of FASD. What should Focus have done? Perhaps exercise caution, professional curiosity, and a degree of appropriate wariness. Was everything as it seemed? They surely could not judge over the phone about someone they'd never heard of, especially someone with such special needs affecting executive function and reasoning. Surely they would advise holding off until there was the opportunity to meet with Lizzie and conduct a formal capacity assessment that fulfilled the Mental Capacity Act's stipulations and associated guidance. Surely social services would have the presence of mind and professional astuteness to advise postponing the plan until further investigation, including consultation with Lizzie's parents. Surely. But no. According to Linkage College's investigative report, the direct quote from Focus Adult Social Work was, quote, "As Lizzie is 18, legally we can't do anything apart from ensuring that Lizzie is happy with this plan and advising her of safe zones and that she can say no." And that was that. Based on the evidence, it would appear that, without conducting any appropriate tests or checks, Focus gave the nod to Linkage over the phone. And Linkage, in turn, gave the green light to Coral and Lewis. And the next day, Lizzie was gone. If this happened to us, it could happen to any family whose vulnerable young person is a student at Linkage College. Why would Linkage College contact Focus Adult Social Work and not us? The answer lies in one critical line in the follow-up report. Quote, "We can conclude that entries were made following a disclosure." A disclosure. In safeguarding terms, a disclosure has a very specific and resonant meaning. It relates to when an individual shares information about abuse, neglect, or harm they have experienced or are experiencing. A disclosure? Made about who? Presumably us, Jane and I. Made by whom? Presumably Lewis and or Coral, in Lizzie's absence. And that is precisely why the learning mentor contacted Focus Adult Social Care and did not contact us. An allegation was made, and both Linkage College and Focus Adult Social Care took the bait. And so it was that institutional approval was given for Lizzie to be removed in, as the director of FASD Network UK described it, a sinister snatch and grab. You feel your daughter has been or is subject to predatory removal, coercive control, manipulation, and exploitation. Yes. You feel Linkage College has been involved in the development and perpetration of this situation. Yes, absolutely. And the assistant director had provided all the evidence to unambiguously confirm that second point. This investigation had confirmed our suspicions, with bells on, and we were very grateful for his thoroughness and openness. Imagine my surprise, therefore, to read the closing lines. Quote, "In conclusion, following investigation of the additional areas, I have found no evidence that Linkage has been involved in the development and perpetration of the situation, etc., etc." I think he had no choice but to say that, because the alternative, the blatant, unambiguous, consequential alternative, would have such significant implications for the college, he was perhaps not allowed to say what was painfully apparent. The obvious question, therefore, what was the disclosure? Made while Lizzie was munching Pringles on a boat on the River Ouse, or maybe while we were having an arm wrestle when Lizzie grew tired of listening to the tour guide commentary. We were about to find out, courtesy of Humberside Police. Thank you for listening to this episode of When Safeguarding Fails, the Lizzie Gladwell Crisis. Please subscribe for updates at lizziegladwell.org.uk. Share our story, warn others. Thank you again, and join me for the next episode.